Hey, my name is Richie Hackett, and here's my video presenting to driving instructors about visual perception, the importance of understanding it, as well as some ways to get over the barriers of a human being's ability to perceive things visually. And I apologize for the rain and the brook in the back, but I've got my daughter and wife inside running around, so I didn't want to have that distraction for you guys. So, why is it important to understand visual perception? Well, understanding the process helps you understand why people may have some sort of an accident while they're driving, and it will help you understand ways to improve that and to prevent those things from happening. So first, let's start by understanding the basic process of visual perception. So it starts out with a stimulus being detected within the retina. The cones and rods of the retina detect that stimulus, cause an action potential across through the optic nerve to the occipital lobe, and then from there the brain perceives, tells you what it is that you're looking at, and then you go from there. When you're actually processing that information that your eyes sent to your brain, there are a few ways that you can process that information. There are some computational ways, at least theories, and sort of Gestalt Psychology. And these are some ideas that have been considered over time to explain how we perceive and we sort of digest what we are taking in. So in the computational side of things, you can either process information bottom up or top down. So bottom up is the process of identifying every little characteristic of whatever object, thing you are looking at, and then piecing those things together to formulate something. Then top down is calling upon things that you already know, things that you've learned, your experiences, everything that you understand to be true about the world, to understand what it is you are looking at and make your decisions, your actions toward what you're perceiving. And from a Gestalt point of view, it's more of a grouping things up by similarity, proximity, good continuation, closure, and simplicity. So having that understanding, let's move on to some errors in those modes of perception with regards to that driving and safety while you're driving. So top-down processing doesn't necessarily provide an accurate picture. And what I mean is, so you're seeing what you're actually seeing, but you're interpreting it in a way that isn't actually true. So for example, there's the Ponzo illusion, where, take a look at this picture right here. Most people will look at this picture and say that the oval shape on top is actually larger than the oval shape on bottom, which isn't true, because when I drew this, I used the same size piece, the same exact piece, to make those two oval shapes. So we use what is around the objects we're perceiving to help us understand what it is, and sometimes based on that information we're taking in, we're seeing what's actually there, but the picture that we're making up in our minds makes us perceive something that looks different from what it really is. See, and that can be an issue while you're driving, because you may perceive something to be further away from you than it really is. So say, for example, a lot of your mirrors when you're driving in your vehicle say objects are much closer than they may appear in the mirror. So understanding that in top-down processing, that you can make these mistakes in terms of where things are in space based on those details that your mind is taking in, it's important because that's a huge safety issue, and we'll get to that in a minute. Also, in another error is in relation to Gestalt psychology and attention, and how we tend to miss things when we're concentrating on another thing. So, inattentional blindness is another idea that's been studied for some time. And inattention blindness is the idea that somebody is concentrating on something and they miss something else that's happening in the middle of putting their attention toward one other thing. So, for example, there's some studies that have been done by Daniel Simons and Christopher, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing this right, Chabris, where they had subjects watch a video of two basketball teams, white shirts, black shirts, and they're passing a basketball around. The teams are passing basketball around, and the researchers asked the subjects to concentrate on one color team or the other and count how many times the ball is tossed. And in that process, they're concentrating on counting, and then another object walks through the screen. And a fair number of people didn't actually notice that other object coming through the screen. So that's what inattention blindness is. And it also happens that a student working underneath them, Stephen Most, performed another study where people were to concentrate on either white and black squares, or all white circles and squares, or all black circles and squares. And when they were doing that, there was a red cross that would come across the screen, and a fair number of subjects would not see that cross. So what does Gestalt psychology have to do then? So we tend to group things up based on what Daniel Simons and Chris Chabris have found out, and in addition to what Stephen Most found, that we tend to concentrate on things and notice things when they're similar. So a piece I forgot to say was that Simons and Chabris also had a gorilla walk through, and students were more apt to see the gorilla if the gorilla was the same color as the team that they were concentrating on. So that's the connection right there, is that we tend to group things together based on similarity. That's a part of Gestalt psychology, is we tend to group things with like things. So what we tend to do is we tend to miss those other things. So say you're driving down the road and it's a fall day, you've got those beautiful leaves, you're on Interstate 89 coming north in New Hampshire, and you're mesmerized by all of the oranges, yellow, reds, the varying colors, and as you're going, you're seeing all of the similar colors as you're going up the road, and then suddenly a dog or a fox comes up across, and you don't necessarily notice it because it's not a part of the big picture, it's not a part of the group of everything else that you're looking at, and next thing you know, it's too late before you notice. And obviously I won't go there, but you can presume what I'm getting at with that point. So that is another big error in our processing system, let's call it. And another interesting point I'd like to bring up is that Stephen Most, not only did he support the similarity idea, but he also concluded that maybe people aren't good at concentrating on more than one thing, which explains why we don't actually see something else that comes through when we're not concentrating on that particular unexpected object that's coming through. So, how can you prevent those things from happening? So, in terms of the top-down processing, where relative to other features in the scene that we're looking at, we may perceive an object to be closer or further away than it actually is. So a safe thing to do is to always assume that objects are closer to you than they really are, because that could be the difference between you hitting the brake at the time that helps you to stop in time and not. So as far as the Gestalt Psychology and our ability to pay attention, minimize the number of stimuli coming at you while you're driving. Because if you're already perceiving all of these things, it can be more difficult to take in one more stimulus and effectively perceive and make a good decision about it. Also, while you're driving, it's important to constantly look around, concentrating on different objects and being aware of what is around, as opposed to staring at one particular thing. So say you're driving down the road and you're staring at just the road, you may not notice something coming at you from the side, or if you're enjoying the beautiful fall trees, you may not see those other things coming at you. So always scanning, always changing the scene that you're looking at can help prevent accidents and keep you safe while you're on the road. And that's it for my brief presentation. I ran a little bit over time, but I hope you appreciate this information and you can consider it, and it improves your driving, but it also helps you to improve teaching your students how to be safe while they're driving.